Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into Yeti to eDNA, the real science of cryptozoology. We're going to embark on an absolutely incredible journey that bridges the gap between ancient mythology and the cutting edge of modern genetics. We're talking about a story that kicks off with a mysterious set of snowy footprints in the high Himalayas and actually ends up in the sterile, high-tech labs of the 21st century. It's a completely fascinating look at how we process the unknown and how modern science is quite literally validating some of our oldest legends. So buckle up, because we're about to explore the real science of cryptozoology.
Okay, let's dive into this. The entire mystery really exploded onto the global stage thanks to one single piece of visual history. Back during the 1951 Everest expedition, British mountaineer Eric Shipton was exploring the Mumlik Basin, and he stumbled upon something just extraordinary. He photographed what looked like these massive humanoid footprints right in the snow. And because he didn't have a tape measure handy, Shipton ingeniously placed his ice axe and a booted foot right next to the prints for scale. They measured a whopping 12 to 13 inches long. Suddenly, these weren't just campfire stories anymore, right? This was actual physical documentation. In fact, those original photographs became such a culturally significant artifact that they were later auctioned off at Christie's. It was the exact moment the Yeti stepped out of local folklore and onto the global stage.
And the encounters definitely didn't stop there. Just a year later, in 1952, the legendary mountaineer Edmund Hillary was climbing this incredibly steep pitch between the Negujumba and Khumbu glaciers at well over 19,000 feet. Out of nowhere, his Sherpa guide, Pemba, suddenly stopped and excitedly picked something off a rock. It was a tuft of thick, coarse, long black hairs, looking way more like heavy bristles than anything human. Pemba, with absolute conviction, presented them to Hillary and shouted, "Yeti, Sahib, Yeti!" Hillary even noted that whatever creature left that hair was clearly no mean rock climber. This really establishes the visceral, immediate reality of the legend for the local Himalayan guides. To them, this wasn't some myth, it was literally a neighbor living in the extreme altitudes.
And this brilliantly illustrates a massive divide in perception. On the one hand, you had Shipton's tangible, physical evidence from the harsh reality of the Himalayas. But on the other, Western pop culture rapidly absorbed the mystery and completely mutated it. The West quickly turned a genuine enigma of natural history into this fear-driven B-movie monster. The actual scientific curiosity generated by those initial footprints was almost immediately hijacked by a hunger for tabloid spectacle and cinematic horror. This distortion actually traces back to a very specific origin point. Like, how did a mountain primate turn into a monster? Well, a British journalist named Henry Newman was interviewing locals, and he mistranslated the Tibetan word for filthy, or unclean, into the English word abominable. And just like that, the abominable snowman was born. But the authentic Himalayan view, it's entirely different. In Tibetan Buddhism and Sherpa culture, the Yeti is a deeply revered guardian spirit of the mountains. It's tied to protecting sacred sites and profound spiritual teachings. It essentially represents the dual nature of the wilderness. Dangerous for sure, but also divine and absolutely worthy of deep respect. Because of all that Western sensationalism, the scientific study of these creatures, cryptozoology, often gets a really bad rap. But we need to completely reframe this. The term wasn't dreamed up by Hollywood. It was actually coined back in the early 1940s by zoologist Ivan T. Sanderson, and then later formalized by the Belgian zoologist Bernard Heuvelmans. Derived from the Greek word kryptos, meaning hidden, it's legitimately defined as the study of hidden animals. Far from being some tabloid joke, genuine cryptozoology is a totally integrative science. It looks at species unknown to science, presumed extinct species that might still be out there, or known animals living way outside the recognized ranges. If you're feeling a bit skeptical, just consider our own historical track record. We've literally been here before. For centuries, mariners told terrifying tales of the Kraken, this sea monster that could supposedly drag down entire ships. Today, we know it as the perfectly real giant squid. Medieval Europeans used to trade these magical unicorn horns that turned out to just be the tusks of the narwhal. And even more recently, local Laotian folklore spoke of a creature called the Kainyu, while scientists officially identified it in 2005 as the Laotian rock rat, which is from a lineage previously thought to be extinct for 11 million years. These examples grant us permission to take these pursuits seriously. When folklore and fieldwork intersect, the line between myth and biology can blur spectacularly.
Let's move to and see how this builds into modern methodology. Today's researchers aren't just out wandering the woods hoping to randomly spot a monster. They use a highly disciplined, three-step toolkit. First up is ethnography, actually taking the time to listen to local people and study the folklore to find patterns and geographical hotspots. Second, they deploy modern ecological surveys, using things like passive acoustic arrays and massive grids of camera traps. And third, they use the ultimate game changer, environmental DNA, or eDNA. This pluralistic framework is exactly how we separate genuine biological signals from cultural noise.
This third step definitely deserves a closer look. eDNA metabarcoding is essentially the ultimate modern monster hunting technology. You see, animals shed DNA wherever they go, in the water, the soil, the snow, through skin cells, hair, and waste. By collecting these environmental samples, scientists can sequence the genetic markers and check them against global reference databases. It is incredibly sensitive and surprisingly cost-effective for detecting rare or elusive species, without ever having to actually see or capture the animal. It has completely revolutionized how we catalog biodiversity.
And we know for a fact this modern toolkit works because it's yielding incredible results. Just consider some of the discoveries from the past decade or so. The Tapanuli orangutan in Sumatra, that was formally recognized as a brand new species in 2017. The Olinguito, a small mammal down in the Andes, was officially described in 2013. We've even seen amazing rediscoveries of the New Guinea singing dog and the Fernandina giant tortoise. The overarching point here is that our planet's remote refugia, those isolated, untouched habitats like deep mountain ranges and dense forests, they are absolutely still hiding macro-scale biology. Discovery is an ongoing, active process, not just history.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we bring this high-tech science back to our Himalayan mystery. For decades, various monasteries and private collectors have carefully held on to physical relics, hair, bone, skin, and feces, all purported to belong to the Yeti. Well, with the advent of advanced DNA sequencing, the time had finally come to test the legend. In 2017, a team at the University of Buffalo ran intense genetic analyses on several of these alleged Yeti samples. The scientific world waited with bated breath. What would the DNA actually say?
The results were completely decisive. The 2017 University of Buffalo study found that these physical Yeti samples were linked directly to local bear species, specifically the Himalayan brown bear, the Tibetan blue bear, and the Asian black bear. The mythical Yeti was firmly, scientifically anchored in the biology of the region's rare and elusive bears. But, rather than being a disappointment, this is an absolutely fascinating conclusion. It proves that the indigenous stories weren't just entirely made up, they were based on real physical stimuli. It perfectly demonstrates how a physical animal and a deeply rooted symbolic meaning can co-produce an incredible, enduring narrative. But even with the DNA puzzle solved, the story isn't over for the people of the Himalayas. To the Sherpa and Tibetan cultures, the Yeti absolutely endures. It stands as a powerful cultural guardian. The myth survives because it actively teaches respect for nature's mysteries. It serves as this really necessary caution against human hubris in these sacred, often dangerous landscapes. It's a reminder that we are just one small part of a much larger, mysterious cosmos. Science solved the biological riddle, sure, but the spiritual resilience of the Yeti remains a completely valid and powerful force.
So the crucial point is really captured in this beautiful idea: discovery begins where imagination meets disciplined inquiry. This explainer really highlights why we absolutely shouldn't just dismiss local lore or anomalous reports. Yes, we obviously must apply rigorous, transparent, and ethical scientific methods. But the spark for that science? It often comes directly from the stories passed down through generations. The intersection of local folklore and disciplined fieldwork is exactly the frontier where true biological discovery happens.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. If monsters are real, they aren't supernatural. They are quite simply biology waiting to be understood by science. Our deep oceans, remote mountain ranges, and incredibly dense rainforests are Earth's final frontiers. Equipped with modern tools like eDNA and guided by the ancient knowledge of local peoples, the natural world still has an immense capacity to surprise us. So, what hidden biodiversity is waiting out there right now? What will we discover next? Thank you so much for exploring with me today.